Welcome, friends, to a steamy episode of Sophia's Emporium with me, your buddy Suze. So, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen because we have to start at the channel I just subscribed to tonight. You surely think that I would have done it a minute earlier, but hopefully she knows how busy I've been. And it looks like EYWA Music has been busy too. And as you guys know, or I hope you know, they let me use their first single out called Zombie by Ewa. I'm going to say that's how I should pronounce it until I know. And it says first single out now plus music video, kind element. Hope you guys enjoy it. And this is their cover version of Zombie that we always start out with. So let's start there. And I'll talk a little bit.
My Allstate agent gives me safe driving bonus checks. He's also a really good listener.
So I'm going to keep the volume down just a little bit because, of course, this song asks, what's in your head, right? Well, I'm going to tell you what's in my head. And for those of you that know me, I'm really into my library and very unique books of every category. So why I would even try to name it is redunculous, isn't it? But tonight, I am going to read you something that I read for the first time 2 days ago because this is so relevant. I mean, you know, especially if you listen to Zombies and they're always telling you it was the woman's fault. So see, right here, girl, right here, the name of this book is Was It the Woman's Fault? And it's written by someone with the name of Seville. I'm going to show you how old this book is. Look at this. Now, it is from the public library in Pittsfield, Illinois. And you have 14 days to return this. You're going to get fined 2 cents for each day. Can you imagine the value of this book? Oh, if they didn't destroy all the books. And here is the woman. And this is Chicago, Donahue, Henneberry and Company are the publishers. The copyright is 1892 by W.A. Seville. Wow. Okay, so with my own experience, which I'm not adding in tonight, I don't want to take away from the point of this, but if I consider my experience, and then for the first time I read something that is so shocking and so odd, and I consider I've had this book since 2007. This was a book, okay, so in the first place we lived, you know, that wasn't up to code. There was a coffee house on the first floor that had went under because you can only have one in this town. So anyhow, they left all their books. And when we lived there, we actually did go through a lot of the books. And that's where this came from. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that share and go ahead and make myself full screen. Okay. And I'm going to step back and read from the chair. And like I said, this is a steamy hot book, y'all, written in 1892. So welcome to the big action. All right. Was it the woman's fault? Chapter 1. How dare you address such words to me? How dare you? These words came from a beautiful woman. She stood in exquisite loveliness, her magnificent brown eyes flashing the passion of contempt she felt. Her gorgeous complexion almost stealthy in its brilliancy, her tall form drawn up to its full height, displaying her faultless figure beneath the rich folds of a cloak which had partly fallen from her shoulders. Like an enraged goddess, she stood, her features noble and regular, clouded by anger most bitter. Before her, his arms resting on the back of an easy chair, one foot crossed carelessly over the other, a smile upon his handsome face, a cynical curl round the otherwise handsome mouth, his whole manner betraying the rout that he was, stood what the world calls a gentleman. Not once did the expression of his face change. Not once did he move while the magnificent woman before him denounced him in terms so severe they would have entered the heart of a better man like hot steel. With an exquisite grace of manner, he flung himself into the chair by which she stood. Remember, Evelyn, you have brought this upon yourself. You have chosen to take offense at my offer of assistance, or perhaps I should say my mode of assistance, he corrected, turning to his desk at hand and picked up a silver paper cutter, which he buoyed while his eyes were bent upon the beautiful white face before him and the provoking, insolent smile still placed upon his lips. You invited the subject, my charming friend. Do not insult me farther, sir. Reserve your complimentary terms. I called to see you in a desperate moment, to ask your aid, 'tis true. But I little thought the rich Nelson Giles, the philanthropist, the benefactor, so called of the needy, the man whose name is known in 2 countries for his exceedingly generosity and abundant charity, would insult a virtuous woman, and she, daughter of a lifelong friend. The man smiled broadly. The help I ask for is as nothing to you. With your unbounded influence, you could assist me without trouble to yourself or those whom you might ask in my favor. But I have learned this day how shallow, how insincere is all philanthropy. Not so fast, Evelyn. Mrs. Stanley, if you please, sir, she interrupted. Mrs. Stanley, dear, if you like that better, you must not condemn all men charitably disposed on my account. The generosity of other men may be born of a noble impulse, a desire to do good. We must not do them the injustice to think otherwise, having no proof to the contrary. But I confess the money I part with for charity brings me my price. For public gifts, it satisfies me to see my name in print as the generous donor of a large sum. And I like to see the figures larger than those of other men of similar fortunes. This gives tone to my character and adds greatly to my good name. I am known as a good man throughout the city. For this, I am adored by the ladies, courted by men, and better than all, envied by everybody. My self-esteem is flattered. My pride is pampered. I am the great, the generous Nelson Giles. Wherever I set my foot, I hear expressions like these. A noble fellow, a man with a big heart. No thought of self ever enters that man's breast. He is the soul of goodness. Every impulse is one of charity. Ha ha. All these remarks catch my quick ear. I am always quick to hear anything in my praise, and I laugh to think how these charities are magnified. How, when a man has once launched himself upon the sea of philanthropy, how very mighty do his actions appear, like the little white cap upon the great wave beyond. His reputation for charity assumes wonderful proportions. The name once fairly his own, he meets out a little, and the mighty wave rolling rapidly inward reaches a shore, a roaring mountain of snow-white foam, and with a wild plunge breaks upon the shore. Thus at my very feet is thrown the verdict of an admiring people. Those who have never known my bounty sound my praises. All this is a sufficient return. My private charities are very few and occur seldom. Infamous came from the white lips of the lady, angry flashes shooting from her eyes, which were riveted upon the speaker. Without noticing her exclamation, Nelson Giles went on. I have this day offered a private charity to the one woman in all the world I love. Yes, you. Wince as you may, I love, repeated the man with an easy nonchalance and a half-amused indifference to the fire which blazed from the eyes fixed upon him. Yes, Evelyn, this is true. You need not start so wildly. You know that I love you, and many women would be in a delirium of joy if I uttered such words to them. A shudder of aversion crossed the lady's face. I can't imagine, but which was not unnoticed by the speaker. For a moment, she had a lot of etiquette, right? Okay. For a moment, an expression of impatience passed over his brow. It was a moment only. The old smile came back quickly to those lips, and his manner, easy and self-asserted with a sure confidence in his power to triumph, was instantly restored. Evelyn stood like an enraged lioness. Her whole frame seemed madly alive with rage, a rage that would strike as is threatened. He looked upon her rising passion without betraying the least feeling. Evelyn, I love you with all my strength, with all my soul, he said calmly. I have loved you from the first moment that you budded into girlhood. You live in my heart a beautiful vision, waking. You are never absent from my mind. Sleeping, I dream of you and your loveliness. He was growing more passionate with every word. His calmness had entirely forsaken him, and his words trembled on his lips from intensity of feeling. With increased emotion, he continued, while worshiping you in silence, I have suffered an agony you will never know. I have cursed Harry Stanley in my heart 1,000 times, 10,000 times, that he should possess the brightest jewel I have ever seen, the jewel I coveted. I have cursed myself that I should have trusted, as I did, to your youth, your exclusiveness from society, and your recent bereavement combined to keep you secure for me, while I wasted my time in the frivolous of fashion and society. I thought you were safe from me, when, after a proper time, I should unfold my plans to your mother and discuss my secret to you. How I hoped and believed my love would be returned in all its strength, that your young heart would respond with all the warmth and impulsiveness of youth. I could kill the man who robbed me of my hidden treasure. How dare he intrude upon your retirement and gain your young love? I have thought of this until I have become nearly insane. I have thought of many things dangerous to your husband, and God only knows what has restrained me at these times. And now, my sweet Evelyn, you are here in supplication, and I offer you much more than you could ask. Wretch, how dare you make this confession to me? How could you cherish such thoughts for me, a married woman? Are you man or devil? Yes. A low, derisive laugh escaped him. I sincerely believed, he went on, with his former calmness, the love I cherished for you would last win like love for you for me. I am not an indifferent-looking man. Here Mr. Giles drew himself up with a conscious pride in his elegant personnel. The ladies do not hesitate to flatter me. Society ladies are not over-modest, my dear, and I often am reminded that I am a handsome fellow. Now, my darling, hear me with some pity, with compassion. His voice was now low, tremulous, musical, pleading, while his handsome eyes glowed with softness light, which must have entered his heart of any woman, unless thoroughly enraged, insulted, as this woman was. For months, I have been starving for your love. The more I think of it, the wilder I grow. It has become a disease with me, and I find myself in a state of extreme nervousness. When my friends ask why I am less gay than formerly, I turn their remarks into jests and acknowledge to myself that I am greatly changed. How changed and why? Physically? Then a small voice which speaks truthfully to everyone. That voice which governs us or not. As we ourselves direct, I hear it whisper, son of Adam, how weak art thou to die for the love of one woman. He paused an instant, looking pleadingly into her eyes. Vile, miserable creature, I will not remain to be insulted so grossly. Let me go, let me escape from such a monster. With these words, the outraged woman turned quickly towards the door. With a movement quite as sudden, the man sprung forward and seized her by the arm. You cannot escape me like this, my beautiful friend. You shall remain here. This is wild. Hang on, let me compose myself. Yeah, you shall remain here and listen to all I have to say. I cannot let you go. You are in my power now, and I shall not release you. By heaven, you shall hear me out. He had her tightly clasped in his strong arms now. Her desperate efforts to escape him were unavailing. His eyes were glaring fiendishly upon her pale, beautiful face. Let me go, she cried, struggling until her strength was nearly gone. Do you think to escape me so easily? Came in burning tones from the lips. Do you fancy I am going to give you up now that I have caught you, my pretty bird? No, no. Too often have I coveted this prize. Too often have I thought how someday I would capture you and keep you. Do you fancy in the moment of my triumph I shall suffer defeat? You are caged, my lovely Evelyn. To scream or call is of no avail. My clerks are all gone. We are entirely alone. You must appeal to me only. Oh, in pity, let me go. I conjure you, be a man, and have some mercy, she cried in a frightening tone, turning her luminous eyes upon him in supplication. Will you let him die? Will you abandon him to his fate? Reflect. Heavenly Father, protect me, she cried reverently, her eyes raised to heaven, her white lips whispering a prayer. She looked like some beautiful saint. His words had pierced her like a dagger. Would she let her loved ones die? She tottered and would have fallen at his feet had not his strong arm still held her. He held her tightly with one arm while he reached to his desk, poured from a bottle some old sherry wine, and forced it between her lips. When she showed signs of coming strength, he placed her tenderly on a chair and standing close by gazed upon her in gloating triumph mingled with pity. Evelyn Stanley's heart was sick within her. Many words sprung to her lips, but she did not utter them. A strange revulsion of feeling passed over her. She hated the man at her side as she never knew she could hate, and not an hour before she honored and respected him. Now she knew the man's character. Black and base as it was, it sounded, but this to awaken within her a repulsion so bitter it consumed her whole being, and yet left her no strength for action. If she could slay him, oh, for the power to do so. Her breath came quickly and hard. while she felt his wicked eyes upon her. Thrice did she serve herself for the encounter, as she would have done had she been face to face with the lion in the forest. Made desperate by the situation, she gathered strength and sprang to her feet. He is dying, reflect, came again in cold, measurable tones. Oh God, have mercy, came from the agonized lips. And she fell back in her chair, weak as an infant. Her beloved, her idolized husband, was sick unto death while she was idling her time with this libertine. And yet, what could she do for him? How procure nourishment to preserve that life she so fondly cherished? Whither could she return to a voice that would listen to her sufferings, one that would aid her in her extremity? Alas, only from those in the same desperate situation could she expect anything, and then only sympathy. This was all they had to give. This she did not ask. Aid from those who could not afford to render it was out of the question. They had no time to listen to the sufferings of their fellow creatures. To the wealthy, she could not flee. Their hours were all consecrated to the bright side of life and its pleasures. No shadow must darken their threshold. And for a poor, forlorn, distressed woman with a wan white face to obtrude her cares and anxieties upon them would darken the brightness of their mercy. Happy hearts would happy hearts and obscure the sunlight of their homes. This would be a calamity which they could not permit for many reasons. Financial distress is the most degrading distress in which a human creature can be caught. The wealthy flee from this sort of affliction as they would from a leper. It is not catching, but it is vile and loathsome. It has always been so, always will be so. Evelyn's sensitive nature shrank from making any other efforts for Cherry's sake. She was too cultured to beg from any one, too refined to submit herself to further insult from those who paraded their goodness at heart in the manner of the man before her. Little do those in affluence know the sufferings of what the world dubs the shabby genteel, the shabby genteel. No one in easy circumstance, no matter what their former struggles may have been, will allow themselves to be harassed by a picture in reality of the other side of life. All this Evelyn knew from experience. In her own beautiful house, she had experienced changes which had taught her how empty, how insincere are most of human friendships. Since their misfortunes had been suspected by their numerous friends, these friends had grown less and less in number until the falling off had left her quite alone with her sick. When her home could no longer offer hospitality to society, society kindly left them to themselves. Many lesser lights followed their leaders They dared not act from their own inclination. If Mrs. Scott would not visit the Stanleys anymore, they could not afford to do so, as Mrs. Scott was rigid in all the laws which govern society, and would not willingly receive any one of her own who set infringed upon the code. No exceptions were allowed. Like a raving torrent, all this arose in Mrs. Stanley's mind, and her tormentor's words were still ringing in her ears. She felt too keenly her utter helplessness. The only one to whom she could appeal in her distress had turned traitor, and now, alas, whither should she flee? She found no hope, no refuge. The man before her was known throughout the country for his honor, sympathy, and benefits. He had flaunted the fact in her face that he was a villain, one whose soul was as black as Satan's, whose life was a living lie. This man she had almost revered. She thought him her friend, the friend of her family. Here she stood, torturing her soul with her misery. He had opened the door of despair wider still, and brought her face to face with ruin and death. Death, unless she should comply with his adulterous offer, and ruin in any case. Could she see her husband die for want of proper nourishment? Oh, how hard it all was, how cruel. Have you no pity? She cried out at last, clasping her white hands and raising her lovely eyes filled with despair which racked her soul. The tears glistened on her long lashes and falling upon her pale cheek. Her tone, the expression of her beautiful face, would have moved a heart of stone. How can you forget the friendship which existed for so many long years between you and my father? How can you ignore the suffering of his only child, she whom you used to love and caress in her babyhood? How can you insult the memory of that father, your truest friend in life, by offering insult to his distressed child? Could he have imagined such a moment as this? Alas, alas, in the hour of distress, he would have been the one he would have directed me to appeal to. He always esteemed you as the best of men and a grateful friend. So I am grateful, Evelyn. He did not misunderstand me there. Your father's friendship is sacred to me. Toward him, I never practiced deceit. He it was that gave me my first successful start in life. From some strange fatality, I never succeeded until your father advised and helped me. And that was at a moment when ambition was nearly dead from successively being defeated. How can you, when you still hold my dear father's memory thus sacredly, see my misery, my absolute poverty? How can you withhold your assistance, your influence? This is all I ask of you, Nelson Giles. My precious husband is dying, perhaps, at this very moment. Oh, have some pity. You cannot feel thus towards dear Papa. You cannot cherish his memory so kindly, so tenderly, without having some soul. Have pity on us. For 6 weary weeks, my husband was at the very door of death, and has lain helpless as a child since. I have watched him alone through the delirium of fever, and tended him night after night with an agony of heart none but an anxious, despairing watcher can understand. All this has passed away, and a greater danger threatens. He might live if I could procure for him the proper nourishment. This he must have. He must be coaxed back to life or die. Oh, Mr. Giles, in heaven's name, I beg of you, help me to save my husband. He is all I have on earth besides my darling boy, and he is too young to realize our desperate situation. You know my father's disastrous failure caused his death, and yet it did not affect your style of living, your mother's handsome income, which was sufficient to sustain you all in the old way, said Mr. Giles reflectively. Yes, it is true, but Mama's income ceased at her death. There was nothing left for me. And the handsome patrimony left Dr. Stanley by his father was swept away by the Grant and Ward disaster, that gaming, bogus firm, ha-ha. Another instance of misplaced confidence. What's in a name? Young Grant was Harry's friend and assured him the money would be invested in such a way as to bring excess of interest besides being perfectly safe. Harry listened to his overtures, and having favorable opportunities, turned everything into cash. All this the firm swept in, only in a few days before the crash came, and every cent of his handsome fortune was lost. It is better to do business with enemies than friends. Eh, little one? Have you ever thought of this? Huh. Mama died 3 weeks after the failure of the Grant and Ward firm. She worried herself to death. Harry had just entered upon his professional career and had bright promises, very bright. His social position gave him an entree into homes of wealth and standing, which at once defined his position. Had not sickness overtaken him, we would be above want. Oh, Mama, dear Mama, is it with us as you feared? I never knew the value of money while you lived. Wow. That's interesting. All right. Evelyn buried her face in her hands and sobbed aloud. Evelyn, tell me, how have you managed to deceive your husband during these long weeks in which you have been helpless and alone? Harry rented and furnished a pretty little house a few blocks from my old home. When Mama died, her house was no longer ours. I was allowed the furniture. Some of this I disposed of by sale, as it was too large and elaborate for our less pretentious home, while some of it I had removed to my new abode. I had a wealth of small articles of value, which Mama had gathered for years. These I treasured. I realized several $100s for the articles I sold. And this money had been what I had lived on during Harry's sickness. 3 weeks ago, I discharged my only servant, but for 3 months before it is now 3 months since the fever left him almost a hopeless invalid. I had been sustained, my household, on the sacrifice of a beautiful objects of art Mama left me. This last art treasure I had is gone. I have nothing more to dispose of. I cannot rob my husband of the bed on which he lies. In this, the perilous moment, I came to you. You should have come before. You should not have waited until you had lost everything. Let me see. You have been 5 years married, and your son is 3 years old, is he not? Yes, this very day. Evelyn, my love, my darling, come to my heart, trust to me, and send aid to your husband and boy. They shall not want for the least thing, not even care, for this also can be purchased. I'll send one of the good sisters to his bedside, and as a trained nurse, besides, I'll send wine, brandy, and all other necessaries for the sick. I will see that your boy is properly cared for. By finding a motherly woman to take charge of your husband's household until he shall regain his strength sufficiently to arrange things for himself. Oh, I will do anything that you shall direct in this matter. They are your parents' old friends, the Hardmans. He is a good man, and she a good pious woman. Mr. Hardman was pensioned by his church years ago, and this he owes to your father. He it was who proposed that Mr. Hardman should not be asked to resign on account of his declining ability, unless handsomely pensioned. Your father contributed very largely. He also gave Mr. Hardman the house, which he now occupies. They would do anything for the daughter of their old friend. I could readily influence them in your name to leave their home for a time and go to yours. Surely you could trust your loved ones with them. Evelyn had risen and stood, clutching the chair for support. Nelson Giles had relinquished his hold of her and stood regarding her with admiration. Her eyes were full of fire. Her breath came quick and hard. Never before had Evelyn shown such strength, such anger. An agony of fear seemed to make her powerful, even ferocious. She fairly trembled with passion. With one bound, she reached the center of the room, but her tormentor was too quick for her. He had her in his arms on the instant, smiling triumphantly to her face. Let me leave this place, or I will kill you, she said frantically. I do not doubt your unflinching determination to do so, my beautiful friend. If it were in your power, but unless the flash, the fire from those grand eyes of yours can kill, I am in no great danger. All the mercilessness of your sex is alive in you at this moment, I am assured, and yet I feel quite safe. A scornful smile passed his lips as he uttered these words, a smile habitual to him. I will go to my husband. You shall not prevent me, Evelyn said slowly through her set teeth. Wretch, you shall not detain me longer. She wrenched herself from his hands and sprang forward. She reached the door, drew back the bolt, flung it wide open, and rushed out. On she sped down the wide hallway until she found exit cut off by another ponderous door. At the moment of suspense, peril, and fear, she could hardly breathe. She did not dare to look back to see if she was pursued. She felt at that moment if she was to face Nelson Giles, she would drop dead at his feet. Now, let's share the screen for a minute. Pretty steamy story, huh? Okay. Now, let's assume that I'm not nuttier than a fruitcake, right? Because we all know the truth of this. This is just the coolest thing that's going on, and it's such an incredible, never-ending story and such a blessed mystery. But, okay, so I'm thinking that I could probably turn you guys on to the newest song that she put out on February 10th, 2017. And, you know, it's very interesting. You got to remember the first show that I did on the Presley Mystery was on Valentine's Day. So you guys know I timeline everything. And, you know, obviously that's only 4 days difference. I mean, I'm going to have to say confirmation of spirit, phenomenon progress, but I gotta play you her new song. So I hope it's okay. Okay. So we're back to our YouTube channel. I can't barely look at this without laughing. Hang on a second. All right, let me compose myself. So, of course, we got this very lovable rabbit mask here and a whole bunch of action. And this is all in German. And see, a lot of people would never engage, you know, in channels where they can't, like, speak of the English, right? But it's great because you can feel so much more from inside your being when you don't rely on language. And that's what's so cool about the telepathy and the heart brain and all this. So I would read this all to you, but there's no way I can. So I'm going to just move my live stream up to this so you can see and do whatever you want with it. All right. Let's get that situated again. So check this out, man. I'm gonna get some tea.
Plötzlich kannst du nicht mehr gehen, weil es sich so wird. Alles zerfällt, alles vergeht. Und dann bist du immer noch so wunderschön. Warte auf uns, dein das Mal wird man nicht. Jeder Moment mit dir ist oh so teuer, es hat mich schwer erwischt. Alles zerfällt, alles vergeht. Und dann bist du
What? No. So here's what I'm getting out of this whole thing, because I bet you're, I don't know, I can't even imagine. But it's like I say about this online adventure and the mission I'm on, okay? I was recruited and courted from the go, and I, come on, 3 days in, I'm experiencing exactly what we've shown on the Elvis footage, where they can turn the camera around, interact with you, set up what you're going to watch. And you know what? A lot of people go, run, run, run away, run away. And it's like, that's really stupid, because that's what becomes the demon. See, that becomes the scary thing that goes bump in the night. And if my mission is really unconditional love, and I've taken on some flippin' AI intelligence and disclosed a bunch of hardcore stuff, just being me and not even knowing the rules, without, you know, without any kind of intent or any footprint. It's just, it is what it is, man. And I have not once feared, and even though I've went through so much hell, we're not even going to talk about it. And I'm talking about online with just nonsense and, you know, wackos and bad spell casting and bullshit. Really, I've been so blessed and I've been so protected. I made a joke the other day. I said, I think I'm more protected than the President of the United States, because there's these true men that are coming forward. They have that Thalate warrior spirit. This is the divine masculine energy that this planet so desperately needs. So, you know, it has to materialize in like real people that you can say, hey, I know that's a real human being, instead of, hey, I think that's a rabbit or a bot or somebody that's making up their own fucking nonsensical name online. You know, everybody needs to front, say who they are and what they do and what their fucking mission is. And if it's not true, then just really don't interact. I mean, you know, outside of your own little ridiculous matrix. But we're breaking out, and it's like it's coming from all over the world. All this great music, and none of it's coming from out of the United States. And you know what? Look, I love the United States. Whatever. I mean, I'm not here to rag on anybody. But what I am saying is that I guess because I had such a traumatic life, man, I didn't have any time to worry about what was going on outside my little world, because I felt like like a kid or something. I don't know. And, you know, for real, like we know, they were not teaching that up in school. Everybody knows it. All right. So let's get back to this book. I just wanted to use that as an intermission. Grab a drink of tea, grab a smoke, get my chocolate. Put my cigarette out. You know, for years, I've been putting my cigarettes out in plants, and people go, oh my God, Suze, that's terrible. You're going to hurt the plant. But no, you're not. Are you kidding? Nothing wrong with organic tobacco or clean tobacco. That comes from a wicked redhead, though, so I'm sure that's not the popular opinion. I'm almost there. You know, I should have marked the page, right? Okay, I got it. Wretch, you shall not detain me longer. She wrenched herself from his hands, sprang forward. She reached the door, threw back the bolt, flung it wide open, and rushed out. On she sped down the wide hallway until she found exit cut off by another ponderous door. At this moment of suspense, peril, and fear, she could hardly breathe. She did not dare look back to see if she was pursued. She felt at that moment if she was to face Nelson Giles, she would drop dead to his feet. She took instant courage and tried the door. That too was bolted. The bolt was rusty and heavy. She tried with all her strength to move it, but without avail. There was no other way. She must draw the bolt or return the way she had come. Never, never, she said aloud. I have escaped the lion's den, and never will I trust myself to return. Fear gave her strength and courage. She took off her shoe, and with the heel hammered indefatigably until her strength was gone, and she had to cease to recover her breath. Then she tried again and again, until at last she saw the bolt move, then give way and shoot back. Evelyn pressed her hand to her heart. She nearly fainted, so excited she had become by this time. Hastily drawing on her shoe, she proceeded cautiously to open the door, which was heavy and hung so strongly upon its rusty hinges she could hardly move it with the full weight of her body, which she threw against it unsparingly. It gave way at last, and she found herself not in the open air she had thought she would be, but in an elegantly furnished room, the center one of a suite of 3, all sumptuous enough for a fairy queen. Not a soul seemed to inhabit these beautiful apartments. At first, she dared not venture from the door by which she had entered. Then the thought rushed upon her that the only way of escape was through these apartments, and perhaps she might find a woman who would direct her to the street. Hang on. All right, hang on. Right. Where's the street? Hang on. That's funny shit. Yeah, okay. I can't find the street, you guys. That's funny. Fear gave her strength and courage. And she took off her shoe. Yeah. She put her shoe back on. The bolt gave away at last. Nobody was at the apartments. She's breathing freely here. Okay. Whoever occupies these rooms, she said, can be no greater fiend than the man I have just escaped. And though I may have fled from the danger to fall into another, I have saved myself from Nelson Giles. She crossed the room to the broad, elegantly draped window and looked out upon the garden below. Though the shrubs and trees were leafless, the statuary made it pretty even in its wintry garb and gave promise of its beauty in summer. Evelyn turned from the window to survey the room on the left. From the window of this room, of which there were 4, 2 opening onto the garden spoken of, and 2 at the end of the room, she saw a wide carriageway, the same beautiful statuary ornamenting each side of this driveway. There was no way of escape here. All the windows were secured, fastened in a way she did not understand. Even if she could have dared jump from such a height, she hurriedly turned away, satisfied. There was no door or other mode of egress from this room. She passed through the apartment she had first entered and traversed its length to the one on the right. She did not go to the windows of this room, for they overlooked the garden, as did the others, but passed on to the extreme end of the room. Here was a door. She nearly fainted with joy. She listened, not a sound reached her ear. This must lead to some hallway, she said in a faint whisper. By this time, she felt all her nervousness returning, and she was trembling in every limb. She took courage and examined the door. It was unlocked. There was a bolt besides the immense lock with a very large, strong key. With increasing excitement, she turned the latch, but for a moment she could not find courage to open the door. She stood with her hand trembling on the knob. She was faint and sick. I must, oh shit. I must, she says. And with these words, she pushed the door inward and found herself on the threshold of another exquisitely furnished room. And before her, a smile upon his handsome mouth stood Nelson Giles. Right, Nelson Giles. His hands were extended and his attitude showed that he had been expecting her. My lovely Evelyn, I am proud to receive you in my sumptuous bachelor apartment. This is an honor I have never expected would come to me. Welcome, loveliest of women, welcome. Without a word, Evelyn stood transfixed to the spot. She had no power of speech or action. Her eyes were raised to his face, but they seemed to have lost their expression. She heard his voice, yet understood not his word. She might have been the marble Clyte in the garden below for all the animation she seemed to possess. Her hand was still upon the knob, which supported her slight figure. She was conscious that she clung to it. She also saw Nelson Giles take a step towards her, but he seemed to fade, to vanish. She knew no more, for she felt lifeless at his feet that moment. Caged, he said triumphantly as he dropped beside her. Tag. All right. So we're, I don't know, it looks like we're 22 pages into this book. And, I read it earlier And I always say this about my studies. Seriously, if you really want to know what's going on with something, you need to experience it on a multi-dimensional frame of reference to really be able to wrap your mind around it. And I thought it would be wise if I read this out loud. And several times today, I surely did respond to my new friends. So we should probably zip over there real quick. Now, this still cracks me up, okay? Why is it that such a nice young man, I'm just playing with you, Hellmaker. I know you're a teddy bear sweetheart, but I mean, doesn't he just look like a nice, wholesome boy? A young man. I mean, it depends on how you think about age. I'm 53, so it's all your point of reference, I guess. But his name is Hellmaker, and he has all these great. It's not blues like I ever heard it, ever. And what a lot of cool music. And somehow, of course, he's very associated with my international man of mystery, Mr. Dot A. Dot P. And that AP is capitalized, y'all. Right. He's the one that turned me on to the reality, you see, that not only can a photograph, an image be manipulated, but also film can too. And so when you think about that, you realize how easy it would be to whitewash history and create democide and chaos for profit and twist stories about splitting zygotes and hurting human beings and, all the mind control projects and everything that springs off of Artichoke and MK Ultra and on and on and on. And it's all real. And, some people fight about it and some people are scared about it and some people don't even know about it, which it's a lot for people to handle. But, I'm just trying to show you that there's some great people that have got some really cool music going on. And I live in this great world where people explain things like, say, the whole, they call it the correction of Sophia or Sophia. And it's John Lamb Lash, JLL, Mr. Cool. I totally dig him. I've completed 3 years online and I don't play around. I'm kind of a serious bitch. And I've always loved this guy from the go. So if you're ever interested on checking out my YouTube channel, it's really extensive and I'm Suze Pratt on YouTube. I really confuse a lot of people. And all I can say about what I shared with you guys tonight, there's a whole lot of yakety squack about twin flame soulmates. And believe me, I yakety squacked about it too and put my witness into my Suze Pratt YouTube channel. I believe what I believe and know what I know. And I really do need to speak on all of that, but I'm not going to attach that to this transmission. I'll have notes by that time. But if you're interested in chasing down this mystery, I would say to come to John's channel and check it out. It looks a little spooky, I guess, if you still got any hang-ups, but hopefully anybody that sees this is past that, and we're going to have to get over a few more, I have a feeling. So, did I want to say anything else? Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. All right. Now, I've shared a book with you guys, and I have pictures on my social media, wherever it is, of a book that was for anthropology students during the time when women's birth control was not allowed to be spoken about. If you combine that with the premier medical book of 1900, it talks about so many things. But when you're dealing with women and etiquette, in order to keep them in line and to keep their cycle regular so everything could be according to, I would call it technology of that time, that the woman was not excitable. So I'll give you a great example, modern day. Somebody goes to a party or they go to a wedding reception or they even go to a funeral. That up and down of emotion, like you see an old friend and you go and you say, hey, let's go have a drink, and talk about old times. And the next thing you know what happens. And the gal gets knocked up. That's because that wave of emotion can release extra eggs. And so you can have what's called a mistake. Because, if you're doing it the right way, it is completely planned and you get the charts out and you do the deal and the woman is, pristine and you work her just like a clock. Which, you can take that more than one way. It just depends on how you're experiencing your reality. It's all okay. All right. I guess, you know what? I will say one more thing. And I'm just tagging this because I document my journey. And I'm not going to miss a heartbeat. Oh. See this newest picture that my buddy John used here, on the outgoing confirmation of the Gnostic investigations, 57, not 56. He decides to use the picture where that arrow is piercing through that gal. You see that, right? Now, believe it or not, there's a video that Hellmaker has where there's a whole bunch of arrows going through that gal. I mean, she's getting hit from every angle. And I just wanted to tag that because I pick up every one of these things and I love the messages that are being transmitted through Hellmaker. I mean, he's just a sweetheart. All right, I've had enough. So that was really fun. And I appreciate you guys coming along for this never-ending story. And you know I'm going to read, I will read the next chapter privately to myself, and then I'll bring it to you guys and share it. So, peace, love, and light from the big yellow house on the third cosmic ray in Sue's world. Night.